Alright, hello everyone, the Skilled Roy here, back with another Legends Runeterra video, and today we have Sivir, an amazing new card. I think we're going to see what she does here. She's probably going to have a bunch of aggressive tools, probably a bunch of different artifacts based on the token number we know from her video, but let's take a look, shall we?
You've got a problem?
Shares the wealth. Yeah, she's buffs, yeah.
Sign on the dotted line.
4 mana, 5/3, quick attack, spell, shield. You've dealt 35 damage. Wow, okay. She's just raw stats. Reputation activates if allies have struck for 5+ damage at least 4 times this game. Whoa, okay, interesting. All right. Ash, okay.
Make it worth my while. That's all.
Alright, so Sandstone Charger, okay. Let's see what this does. Alright, summon a Sandstone Charger as well, okay. They are 5/2s, okay. So it summons another 5/2. Wow, that's perfect for reputation, eh? Okay. Ricochet.
Blade, sand, and treasure.
A bunch of damage to everything. Woo! Yo, let's go! What the hell? The cutscene was amazing.
Well,
hey, let's go back and watch that again. Hang on.
Blade, sand, and treasure. Couldn't ask for more.
So it flies up to catch up to her. Oh, that's so cool. And she just eats like a slice. Oh, that's sick. Let's go, Sivir.
Well, hello, payday.
Reputation cost 0. Create 2
All
good
that glitters
lucky finds, I think it said.
Mine.
Lucky find. It's like, yeah, so it's kind of like the evolve mechanic in Hearthstone, or the and she gives her other allies.
Guess
Wow.
Just earned her bonus.
Damn. Wait, that's kind of spooky that it can spread spell shield. God damn. Okay, so they also revealed a bunch of Sivir-related cards, and we're gonna hop right into it. And the first one is Runerunner. It is a 5 mana 6/4 with Overwhelm and Spell Shield. Now this seems like pretty, whatever, it's boring, right? But it's actually quite good for its cost if you really think about it. Spell Shield is consistently valued roughly at about 1 full mana. For example, we've seen dragon cards with 5 mana 5/5s that have Spell Shield and they have Fury. Fury is not nearly as efficiently good as Overwhelm is, and this can be comparatively considered to the Fused Drakes. So I'm thinking at this, I think this card's actually pretty good. It might be a solid staple for the mid game of Shurima. A 5 mana 6/4 with Overwhelm is already like not awful stats, and then you add a Spell Shield on top of it and you're like, whoa, wait a second, this can actually do some damage. Especially with some of the vulnerable packages that Shurima has bundled in already, I think this card might be quite insane. We're gonna have to try a couple things out with it, of course, but I think this card is already very, very good. And even though there's no abilities on it, I think it's gonna be well established as a solid card in Shurima. Okay, next up we have Callus Bonecrusher, 4 mana 6/3, reputation I cost 2. Damn. Okay, so this card I think is almost perfectly set up for the Sivir decks. It's a decently statted body that can cost really cheap once you've achieved your reputation, and then you sort of share Sivir's effects with it in order to really make it pop off. Because right now it is just stats, in all honesty. It's nothing incredible on those stats either. It is slightly above average, I think, but it's not going to be anything incredible to write home about, especially with no abilities to get there on its own. I'm also kind of worried because you can't really play it to help set up Sivir, because it's not only it's on the same turn as Sivir because it's 4 mana, but also it's like really not going to survive multiple combats as a 6/3. You kind of have to have the Sivir level up, or of course you have to give it the abilities that we'll see on Sivir's lucky finds. Okay, next up we have Waking Sands, the 2 mana summon a Sandstone Charger, which is a 2 mana 5/2. Now this card doesn't seem particularly incredible, but it being 5 power allows it to quickly activate reputation consistently, and the opponent will typically not want to trade into it because again, this is 2 mana for essentially 5 damage coming at them, which means that if they trade with something like say a 3-drop or 4-drop, you're typically trading up. This card is actually surprisingly decent if you really sort of look into it, especially if you consider again the reputation angle of Sivir. I think the ideal here is to get Overwhelm onto Sivir's level up, and then you attack, and then you get the Sandstone Charge to get Overwhelm as well, because as is, it's going to be really bad against chump blocking decks, but it's going to be very good against any deck trying to fight in the mid range. All right, next up we have another Sandstone Charger card, and this is the 5-mana Sandswept Totem. It is a landmark, and whenever allies attack, summon an attacking Sandstone Charger. Now this doesn't seem incredible on its own, but if you think of this as like a landmark version of Misfortune or Quinn, it becomes a lot more interesting, because with these cards in mind, with say a scout deck, you're gonna start summoning so much value in raw stats that the opponent eventually has to block. It's kind of like having a Hecarim for free all the time. Of course, Hecarim will have his own benefits, of course, but with Sandstone Chargers, you're essentially forcing the opponent to take the block, because if they don't take the block, they're going to be taking a ton of damage. And this will also help you set up your reputation really easily as well. And I think what's really crazy with this is if you play this with Talia, you can actually sort of get around the landmark taking up a unit slot, because then when you attack with your 4 units that you have space left for, you'll actually still summon 2 Sandstone Chargers that can attack with you. The only downside to this card is I think landmark removal is going to be at a premium in the new set because of how many powerful landmarks there are. So I'm sure people will have removal spells ready for this, and that's where it gets a little weak. Because if you can't use this right away, or if they manage to get underneath you by using like 2 or 3 mana to kill the 5-mana landmark you're playing, it's going to feel pretty bad. I'm not going to lie to you guys. So the question really is here, can you set up a good board state for it, perhaps with scouts, perhaps with Talia, that you can start really abusing these 5/2s and start setting up your pressure more reliably? That's the bigger question here. I think it has potential, but I think the meta won't suit it for a little while at the very least. Okay, next up we have Payday, introducing the Lucky Finds. Lucky Finds are basically you play the 0-mana spell onto any one of your units, and the unit will then be given 3 options of 3 possible Lucky Finds to choose from. These include things like +1/+1, +2/+0, +0/+2, Overwhelm, Fearsome, Spell Shield, that sort of thing. So a bunch of the keywords in the game, as well as some stat buffs. Overall, I'm not sure if you want to be paying 2 mana for those sort of effects. That does seem a little weak, to be completely honest, especially since you have not perfect control on them, right? I mean, don't be wrong, getting Spell Shield ahead of time for only 2 mana is pretty decent, but that's definitely one of the better end choices there from the Lucky Finds. I think the best case scenario for these sort of cards is really going to be using it in perhaps an Augment deck, because again, when you create that Lucky Find in your hand, you are creating a card for Augment, which means it's much, much better for those situations. Otherwise, though, I'm not completely sold on this type of card just yet. I definitely have to sort of see how you want to run it. The fact that it's only focus speed as well means you can't use it in response to an opponent, which means you can't like bait them out with a defensive spell at last minute, and you can't like surprise them with a spell shield. It always has to be done ahead of time, which again removes some of its power. I'm not too sure if this is the exact way I want to be using the Lucky Finds, but we'll see. I'm interested at the very least. All right, now this one's a bit more interesting when it comes to Lucky Finds. This is Inner Sanctum, the 3-mana landmark, reputation I cost 0, and countdown 1, create 2 Lucky Finds in hand. Now this is just, oh man, this is just genuinely just perfect, I think. So the idea here is that you achieve reputation, and then right before your opponent ends their attacking turn, you play Inner Sanctum, and then since it countdowns 1, the next turn you're gonna get it, and you get the 2 Lucky Finds in hand, and then you're gonna play both out really quickly. This is a great way to sort of surprise your opponent when they intended to have an answer for you on your next turn. Having both Lucky Finds in hand will give you so much potential to get, say, a Spell Shield, Overwhelm, Challenger. Like, there's so many great tools you could hypothetically get off the Lucky Find that getting 2 of them for free, essentially, is going to be a huge benefit. The question is how easy is Reputation to achieve to make this happen? Because I think this is already an incredible spell. Obviously, if you manage to hit Reputation, the question is more about Reputation specifically. Like, can we easily do it consistently? And that I'm not too certain on yet. I think we're gonna have to see some of the Noxus cards, which I assume are gonna be synergizing with this to really sort of get a better idea, but I'm at least interested in the idea and the concept. I think this is a really, really cool sort of setup card, and I think that's exactly where it's gonna land as a part of the finishing package for Reputation. Okay, next up we have Boomerang Blade, which looks like one of Sivir's associated spells, not her champion spell, but one of the ones that's based on of hers, and it is going to be 7 mana, an ally strikes the strongest and weakest enemies. This is actually quite interesting. So I think especially if you're running a lot of the cards that are going to have 5 power, this is going to end up being often a 2-for-1, which is really, really strong. The biggest issue with this card, in all honesty, though, is just how on earth are you going to cast this without having some sort of response to you? The fact that it has to target you means that you're going to have your ally survive the attack, which means I think you kind of have to look for the Lucky Finds to grab a Spell Shield first before you think about playing this card. That being said, Sivir has Spell Shield built in, so perhaps this is a great card for her. And of course, for any of the 5-power units, this will count as 2 strikes for Reputation. So in many ways, this is kind of like 7 mana, activate your Reputation, in which case, hey, you know what, that's probably pretty good. I'm questioning again just because of how slow it is, if it's going to be really reasonable to use, but I do really like how the opponent can't actually dodge their own creatures out of the way, because again, it targets the strongest and weakest enemies and not your two choices. That means the opponent can't use Glimpse or something to avoid the losing value there, because it'll still hit something else instead. And I think that's probably where this card is at least a little bit more interesting than normally it would be. Again, it's still a little suspicious that you have to drop this much mana for it, but it is a guaranteed 2-for-1, so who knows? We'll have to sort of try this out and sort of figure it out if it's worth that sort of risk. Okay, next up is Ricochet. It is a 6 mana, deal 1 damage to a random enemy or their enemy nexus 5 times, and their reputation is I cost 3 instead. I think this is weirdly enough like a really bizarre sort of decimate in a weird way, which is a 5 mana deal 4 to the enemy nexus. I think your goal with this is really to attack into them really powerfully, and then when they have no board state and you have activated reputation, it becomes a 3 mana deal 5. In which case, that is very powerful. I think that's probably the best use case scenario for this. I'm not too sure how this thing will check for targets in terms of like, can it hit the same target twice in a row, for example? Like if I have 2 targets, right, and one has 1, and then the unit has 1 HP, is it possible for me to miss? I don't know. So we're gonna have to sort of test that out and really expand on what its possible use cases are. But I think once you hit reputation, you're just gonna fire this to do a bunch of damage to their board and or their face, right? So I think for that reason alone, this card's gonna be pretty decent. It's just a 3 mana deal 5, in which case this is how you close out a game as Sivir decks. You know, they're at 3 health, they're at 4 health, they're at 5 health with maybe 1 unit on the board. You play 2 of these for 6 mana, they're taking 10 total damage. Like I think that's genuinely very surprising. And absolutely worst case scenario too, like this is 5 damage, it's still gonna help you progress Sivir's level up as well, so there's that as a possible option as well. Okay, next up we have is Sivir, 4 mana 5/3 with quick attack, spell shield. Level up, you've dealt 35 plus damage, and she levels up into +1/+1 stats, as well as when I'm attacking allies have my keywords. Now I know this seems like almost impossible, 35 damage, but I'll be honest with you, I actually did a lot of testing when I was making a couple cards for custom LOR, and I found out that like dealing more than 20-25 damage is actually quite doable, because considering combat exists, right? 35 damage is not that bad when you consider that she doesn't have to be on the board to do it. You can have any variety of damaging sources from your deck or in the board. Any board wipes will give you a ton of value. Any sort of big spell effects will give you a lot of value. Like this is actually surprisingly decent. And that's not even counting the fact that Sivir is a 4 mana 5/3 quick attack spell shield. Like Jinx is a 4 mana 4/3 quick attack, and while she has a pretty easy level up, in comparison to this, it's also like her body is much weaker. So like because of that, Sivir is gonna just hit the board and just start swinging like crazy, because you can't really answer her because she has spell shield, and you can't even like have an easy block on her because she has quick attack. So it's just like, I think this card is surprisingly decent across the board, just generally. She's just a flexible, good Shurima card, I think. And doing 35 damage is just an inevitability, really. It seems like a lot, I know, but if you really started just like looking into some of the card effects that she has, as well as just attacking consistently over time, you're eventually gonna get this. Remember, you can also just block units too, and you're still gonna get progress for this. So like, if you just put down a bunch of Yetis and you start swinging like crazy with a bunch of 5/5 Yetis, you're gonna hit this extremely quickly. In fact, I challenge you right now, go play a couple games of Legend of Runeterra, play like a mid-range deck, and just count up how much damage you do. I guarantee you'll hit 35 relatively quickly, much faster than you're really thinking, because remember, it'll still count combat doing done to units, right? It'll still count your spell damage, it'll still count your nexus damage, right? This is not 35 damage due to the nexus, obviously, right? They'd be dead. So I think you gotta look at this really, really carefully and assess this, because one big thing that people thought originally with Swain was that his level of condition was too hard. But honestly, it is quite easy. So when you're allowed to have combat, and it sure costs the amount is way higher, but when you're allowed combat on top of that, it just means you're gonna hit that threshold much, much faster. I'm not saying you're leveling up Sivir on curve or anything, that's ridiculous, but I think it's much more likely than people would have you believe. So because of that, I think Sivir is actually quite good. She's quite flexible. She'll be able to easily get into most of your Shurima decks if you really want her. The spell shield effect is really nice. Perhaps the only weak part about her is that you do kind of want to have a deck that's somewhat based on some of her effects for her level up, because otherwise she is just going to be basically a really strong follower, which is totally valid. Hey, look, I play Nocturne, man. That guy is basically Skitterer 4/5/6. So trust me, I know what it means to be a champion, be a follower. But I think it's still at least something to keep in mind and something to sort of keep track of when you're trying to play a Sivir deck. And even having 1 or 2 effects, like say Sivir Aphelios, or Sivir with these lucky picks, or Sivir with augment effects. Like there's actually quite a few different cards that could work well with Sivir, I think. And I think that's the sort of beauty of her effects, I think. Overall, though, I'm pretty happy to see her, and I'm really excited to see LeBlanc tomorrow, because LeBlanc tomorrow should be bringing even more reputation effects, which absolutely suits the perfect reputation of the Black Rose characters. But until then, though, I think this will be it for me. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If you want to discuss some of these cards or help me deck build some of these cards we'll be playing on the first couple days, please come join me in the Discord. Link is in the description. And of course, please like and subscribe. It does a lot to help me out. I would really appreciate it. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, and I just want to say thank you so much to everyone. The amount of support we've gotten over the last couple days has been literally mind-blowing. I was at like 500 subscribers not even like less than a week ago, and to see me like grow this exponentially has been genuinely a huge pleasure for me. And I just want you guys to know that like I really do appreciate it. I was not expecting this to take off as well as it did. And you guys have made me feel really, really happy for being able to do this for you guys. I don't want to be too sappy or anything, but at the very least, thank you again so much for watching. I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.